This is Zariya here. I am with my beloved daughter Treya. She is at university, but she has finished all her assignments. Woohoo! And she is coming home this week. She's finished her 3 years of doing therapeutic psychology. And her final assignment was on, she had to receive therapy for the year and then do a reflective writing piece on what she got out of the therapy. And she asked if I would read through her therapy notes with her. And I was just in tears and so touched because she'd been so proactive. And I just said to her, Treya, can you come live with me and share with everybody about what you did that was proactive so that folk who want to go into therapy know what to do. So how is it to finish first? Finish all your assignments?
It feels like such a relief, but then also it doesn't feel real at the same time. I sort of feel like, whoa.
Yeah.
Doesn't feel like it's the end.
Yeah. Hi, Sana. Good to see you, lovely.
Really
yeah, because it's you've always had something sort of weighing over your head, and now suddenly you've done it all. Now you just have to pack up your room and come home.
Yeah, which I haven't started yet, but it's fine. It's fine.
So a friend of ours, Anna, trained to be a nurse, and they also had to do a reflective writing piece, and I had shared, this reflective writing is quite a challenge, and she said, I'll send you all the notes that I used. And so I looked through them, and hi Tammy and Leela, good to see you, lovelies. We looked through the notes and saw what questions Treya could ask herself before going into therapy. So Treya, before you went into therapy, what did you consider before you went in?
Well, I didn't do this every week. Sometimes I would just turn up. Most of the time I would just turn up to therapy.
Yes.
But on the times where I had more spoons and I was able to prepare more, it would be like looking at like what issues that I wanted to address, and like how was that for me, and was there anything from like previous sessions that I wanted to like re-bring in again and talk about that again. Yeah.
I think it really helped having somebody to talk to, because Treya could go, Mom, I have written up my therapy notes. Can we go through and see if there are any themes that are coming up through the therapy notes that we can look at? Hi, Helen. I know it's not really Helen, but I know who you are, but I'm not going to say, but hello. And hi, Rosie. Good to see you. Great to have you with us. So we would look through that and then see what are the themes that are coming up. And it really helps to be able to write notes before. So it might be looking at like, how are you feeling about yourself? How are you feeling about the dynamics and your relationships with your family? How are you feeling about your relationships with your friends and your purpose in life, or how are you feeling within the world? And then also looking at stuff in the past of what are the things that are coming up again and again that you are noticing the same energy or the same feeling is happening in your relationships now that happened in the past, that you can bring forward and go, this keeps happening. Maybe you could share, if you want, one of the things that you noticed that kept coming up for you.
I think one of the biggest things was me not being able to use my voice.
Yes. Yes.
And like that's always been such a big thing. Like I wasn't able to raise my hand in class until I was 16 years old.
Yeah.
Because I was so anxious. And then like I notice when like I'm with people and they're like, oh, let's do this and stuff, I get into a very hyper like state of like, yeah, let's do it. And then after, but I didn't want to do it. But then it's also like, okay, I need to hold myself accountable because I did do it. And I just need to get better at listening to my no instead of going with
Yes.
and then like, so it was a mixture of like not speaking up and not like using my voice because I was like so scared. And like it's also in other situations, like, so asking for help I really struggle with, like saying no to stuff. And then if something is going on that I don't think is like right or fair or just, I go mute and I can't communicate it. And like one of my biggest takeaways from therapy, we were talking about how with like revolutionaries, they did use their voice, and most of the biggest revolutionaries were murdered for using their voice. So then we were talking about of like, oh, so would I rather keep my mouth shut and die inside, or would I rather use my voice and be killed off by people who don't agree with me and don't necessarily like what I'm saying? Like, which would I rather? Feel good with myself and speak up, or be quiet and feel like, well, what's the point?
Yeah, that's such a beautiful insight of like, if you don't use your voice and you don't have integrity or alignment between what you feel and what you think and share it, then you're kind of killing yourself off because you don't have an intimate relationship with yourself. You're being nice for everybody else, but then not having that connection to yourself. And they might not like you, but at least you like you because you're aligned with what the truth is inside of you.
Yeah. And then I would find other folk who like me for me. And it's like, isn't that better than having people like me who don't actually know me?
Yeah.
Like, what would I rather? Yeah.
All right. So I just remembered we have to go through some of these questions because that's what we said we were going to do. I just asked that random question and then we've gone off. Typical ADHD, just navigating. So before Treya went in, she would ask what are the things she wants to address. And then during the session, what did you do that would help you to remember or keep track of stuff so you could follow up afterwards?
Well, because I have, is it no short-term memory?
Very little short-term memory. Yeah.
So I would have a notebook out in front of me, and I would, but also I'm really bad at taking notes as well. So I would try my best, but I would like write some like notes in therapy. Normally it would just be a word or two, but like, and it was helpful, but like one thing that was frustrating was like I would want to like write a whole like thing, but it's like I couldn't remember the whole thing. But it was fine, but it was really helpful because if I hadn't written the notes, I would not be able to remember what I had done in therapy. So it just helped me to be like, oh yeah, and then this happened, and we yeah.
And I did the same when I was 18, 19, 20 and had a counselor at university. And I had a diary, and in the diary, I would write before, these are the things I want to get out of the session and I want to address. And then next to each one, I would write down what we had, what insight or what practice I needed to do, or what reflection was about, that the therapist was making about me that I needed to look at in myself. I still have that diary of looking, and it is so fabulous to notice the issues that I was working on then with my tiny little scrawling that I used to write so tiny, like 3 lines on one line, trying to fit it all into one page for each session. And that just helped me so much. But what Treya did at the end of every session that was so helpful is what?
I did a voice recording.
Yeah.
And so at the start of the academic year, me and my mom like sat down and we wrote the reflective questions, and they were for me to go through after my therapy session and record like my answer to them. By probably session 3, I had stopped answering those questions because it was just too much for me. So I would just talk through what we had like done in the session. But I had first started doing it on like voice memos on my phone, and then I downloaded Otter, which transcribes it for you.
Yeah.
Which is so amazing, because then afterwards you just have to listen to it and make sure that the transcription like matches what you said, which is so much easier than like listening to it and then typing and pausing and typing and pausing. So
yes. Yeah. And the notes that she wrote came to like 50 pages of notes through the year's sessions. I'll quickly just go through some of the questions that she would ask herself after a session, so that those of you who want to write down the questions, you're welcome to. So the first was a description of the session. What issues did you address? How did you feel? Were there any noticeable moments? Any ways the body was communicating? How did you feel the session went? How did you feel the therapist did? Number 2, about the therapist. What insights did the therapist have? What tools did they use? Because if you notice the tools that they used with you, then you can use those tools again and again. So if you get into the same situation, then you can keep using them. Then insight, what did you learn about yourself? How did you feel about what you're learning about yourself? Because sometimes you learn something and you're like, oh my God, I didn't know that about myself. I don't like that about myself. I need to give more love to this part and be kinder to it and unshame it. And how does it change your sense of self? Because often things in the past make us believe things about ourselves, and then we know, oh, that wasn't my fault, or they just didn't have capacity. I am actually lovable. I have believed that I'm not, but actually I am. So notice how your sense of self is changing so that you can support that through the week. And then look at what you can implement into your life so that you're actually being practical. Like, what awareness or skill are you going to implement? How will you implement it? Do you need to set an alarm clock? And then because Treya is training to be a therapist, there was also a question of more academic stuff. So for those of you who are therapists, I'm just going to share them quickly. If I had a client like me, what would I have done in the session in comparison to the other therapist? What therapeutic tools would I have used? Then number 6, in terms of academics, what research or theory underpins the way the therapist is working and the work that I might have done if I was a therapist. And then you want to look at the themes over time, which we'll get to in a second, of how we did that. What are the things that come up, and what are the core therapeutic theories or understandings or insights that they're revealing? And then an essential thing for number 8 is your relationship with your therapist. How is the connection between the two of you? Do you feel they get you? Are they relating to you in a way that you need? What do you wish that they would improve? Is there anything that you'd like them to address. You know, Treya had one moment where she was like, the therapist said something, and then she was like, I'm not sure. Do you want to share about that?
Yeah, he just said like a word, and I have such a strong repulsion to that word. Like he said, like, maybe one day you'll be able to forgive your father. And I have such a strong repulsion to the word forgiveness.
I don't know where you get that from.
Oh, yeah. No idea. But then someone on my course, like forgiveness came up, and someone else also had like a strong repulsion to that word, and they described how they were able to like understand it and make the word work for them. And that really aligned with me. And it's not necessarily about forgiving what the other person has done to you. It's about forgiving yourself for how you've treated yourself because of what they've done to you, if that makes sense. Because like, I know I can be quite harsh and cruel to myself because I wasn't able to stand up to my father with how he was treating like my mom and brother. So I've always been like really harsh to myself and that. So then it's like, oh, I could actually don't really think I can work to forgiving him, but I can work to forgive myself for how I've treated like little Treya and still Treya now to this day. And so that resonated with me more, and I was able to bring that to therapy. But I wasn't able to be like, felt really weird when you said this.
Yes.
Which is fine. But I was able to bring like what works for me.
Yeah. And I think that capacity to bring back, you know, we need to find our way in. If you haven't had a voice all your life and you're too scared, especially with a man, and Treya had a male therapist.
Who was so lovely. He was like so incredible, so supportive.
He was beautiful. Like I want to meet him one day and give him a hug for being like a co-parent in a way to Treya, because a co-parent to her heart. He was just utterly beautiful. Rosie, I see that you asked, will you be able to rewatch this? Yes, you will. Sana, it's so hard when you have that short-term memory. Oh, the app was Otter.
Yeah.
Otter transcription service.
ER.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Treya, just share a bit, because I think one of the things that therapy does so beautifully is help you to, or help everybody to grow into a more secure attachment and like internalize what the therapist is doing to you so that you grow a more secure attachment with yourself. And I wonder if you could speak a little bit about that.
Yeah. My therapist, he was like right from the very start, he was always so supporting of me. And whenever I would share an experience of, I guess, like someone violating me or something happening to me, he would always like respond in such a full embodied empathetic way, and normally it would come across as like him like being, I guess, like protective and in like an angry empathetic way. And it really helped me to see of like, because I wouldn't allow myself to feel that anger about the situations. So it was really helpful to see him show that anger and be like, oh, actually, it's okay for me to like feel that way. I never fully felt that way, but it was really helpful. And I think it was just like really nourishing for my inner child as well. Because like I said earlier, I don't treat her very well. but because of like his care, kindness, and like empathy and compassion, like I feel like that has really started to seep into my inner child, and hopefully I am able to take that kindness, care, and compassion and stuff and feel that way to my inner child. Like I know I'm really at the start of the journey and it will take a while, because it's been 21 years of being mean to her, so it will take, but I think he's definitely helped me to start that process.
He's really beautiful. I wonder how you let his voice in, because, you know, obviously I'm Treya's mother. So, you know, as she goes through this, she writes in the thing, I've never heard this before. I'm like, oh, you've heard it from me countless times. But you can't hear your mother because your mother is
your mother.
And as a teenager, you need to be separating from. So I've said all these things to her, but suddenly somebody else says it and she's like, wow, this is so touching and beautiful. So I'm curious, how did you let his words in? Because, you know, obviously folk who I work with here let my words in, but some of them sometimes struggle to let them in because of that old belief and programming that's made them feel they're not worthy or deserving. So was there anything that you felt you did that to allow in his goodness and kindness a little bit more?
I don't really know. Like I feel like what probably helped was because I was able to be quite vulnerable with him, and like I guess I was able to share like more of me than mainly just like the people pleasing part. Like I'm sure that probably came across as well, but because like I let him see more of me than I do with a lot of people, and he still cared about me in those moments, I think that made it a bit more easier to hear what he was saying. Because I think a lot of the time when people are like, oh, you're so amazing, you're so great, I'm like, oh no, that's a load of bullshit. Like, no, that's not true at all. But like coming from him, because I was more of me, hearing that sort of stuff, I was able to like hear it a bit more and let it in a bit more instead of being like, no, that you're lying.
That makes a lot of sense. I said that one thing that we would do is share what we did once she had typed up or got the transcriptions. But I wanted to add one thing that also Treya did, is that she wrote down her dreams and took her dreams to the therapy session. I just adore when clients bring dreams to me. And the dreams that Treya took were so identifying exactly what was happening to her in life was happening in the dream. But do you want to share a bit about what we did once you had typed all up your sessions? What did we do then?
Yeah, well, we started to read through them and then bold the bits that were like not waffle. Of like the standout bits of like, oh, this is important, of either what I realized or what he brought in, and like so yeah, because then that also just means like then looking through it again, if I ever, which I will probably do, it's easier just to see like, oh, that's bold, okay, I can read that, and then
Yes, and then we could go through and collect the different themes. So as we were going through, we were saying, oh, there's the challenge of like struggling to feel feelings or struggling to find the voice. I think there were like 5 or 6 things that just kept coming up again and again and again and again, that slowly we could see resolving over the like 18 sessions that she had with him. but it was fascinating to do. So doing that proactively really gets you to, like, it's saying to yourself, you matter to me, you are worth the time to do this, you are worth the energy. And, you know, there were many, many times that Treya didn't have capacity. Treya's got fibromyalgia, she's got dyslexia, and she has a proactive mum. So, you know, you might not have a proactive parent or a proactive friend to do this with. So, you know, I would read through them with her because reading isn't easy for her. So I read through, and together we highlighted in bold what were the core themes. But if you've got a friend that you can do it with, or if you are in my Restore group, you can come and share in there, and we can together. For those of you who don't know, most of you here are from Restore, but for those of you who are not in Restore, there is the link to Restore that you can check it out, restoring.love/365. And that's a community of folk who are healing, and we do group sessions, and you can, you know, see what insight you're getting from the group sessions, and then reflect on that of how it's helping you, so that you are being proactive in the whole healing journey. But one part of that proactiveness is, if you have no energy, to not beat yourself up. How did you shift in that, Treya? Because you can be really, really hard on yourself when you don't have the spoons and make yourself wrong for it.
I'm still learning. I'm still not very good at being very gracious with myself around that area. But I think it's just like so important to listen to your body. I finished like therapy maybe like a month or two ago, and I did make sure that after every single therapy session I would do the voice recording. That was like the only thing that I did consistently, was the voice recording afterwards, because I knew if I didn't do that I would completely forget it. And so but it was only, I think, a week or so ago, like, that I went, like, I think I had like maybe 6 or so transcriptions that I had to listen to, because I just couldn't do it. But then I had to do it because my assignment was due soon, so I had to finish off, like, so I guess with therapy, it's so important to be gracious to yourself, be so empathetic, have so much patience, and have self-care. Because therapy is all about self-care and looking after yourself. So if you are beating yourself up of like, oh, I didn't prepare myself for this session, or I didn't take notes, or I didn't do that, it's like, it's not fair to yourself. Because that's not the point of like why you're doing it. As long as you are gaining the most out of it that you can at that time, because each session will be different of what you can gain and what you can't.
And as a therapist, I love it when a client comes in going, right, these are the things I want to address. We don't, if there are a lot of them, we don't often get to do them all. But sometimes a client will come in and go, there's nothing happening today. I don't need anything. And those sessions are so delicious because you're in a safe space, you are regulated, you are calm, you are happy, and then we can do really deep work. And because you are not as defensive, or you're in a very open, receptive state. And so we can do brain spotting or attachment therapy in a way deeper way, because there aren't all these other things that are urgent and necessary that are happening in your life. So I don't want you to feel like going into therapy, you always have to have a massive agenda of everything you're going to do. Sometimes arriving, just going, oh, I just have a bit of a bellyache coming today. I'm not too sure what it is. And the therapist can help you unravel what that is to really identify. Does anybody have any questions for Treya before we end? Liesel said, dreams are such a rich resource. They are so incredible. So do type your questions, and then before Treya goes, I hope this has been helpful for you. I'm happy to pop the questions into that I used with Treya, or that we made together at the start. For anybody.
And especially with question 5, 6, and 7, you are more than welcome to answer them. But I mainly did them because I had, like, for my course, I had to reflect on it, and because it's a therapy course, that's why I was asking those questions and answering them.
Yeah, but it's still interesting to be able to think those, because the more that you are, I remember going to Ken Wilber's house, who is the integral theory philosopher, and I said, how do you heal from trauma? And he said, you make the subject, like all the stuff that's going on, an object, so that you get a little bit of distance from it. So when you are looking at a theory or naming feelings or gaining perspective, all of that is shifting to make yourself to see it from a new perspective. And that really helps you to be able to do that. And therapy does that beautifully. Treya was doing a very different therapy to what I do. Do you want to share what therapy he did with you?
Yeah, begins with an E.
Existential therapy.
Existential therapy, and he was also a person-centered therapist as well. So it was like a combination of both. And also it was like, because in first year I got therapy through the uni, and he was my counselor then. And then in second year I needed therapy again, and I went to the uni requesting for him again, but he'd left the uni. But they had called me on the phone, and they were like, just to let you know, he's left, so we would have to put you in. I started crying.
Oh, he is just such a lovely man. So lovely.
So in my third year, I was like, there's stuff that I was like, I wanted him as my therapist to be able to talk through him with, that happened after I had stopped therapy with him. So I sought him out, and he agreed to do therapy with me again, which I'm grateful for.
Yeah, such a lovely man. I really value who he is. And a lot of people, I certainly did, but I saw research on this, that a lot of people start, especially if they've had issues with their own father, they often start having a male therapist, and then in years to come, they change into a female therapist. She was doing talk therapy. I do a mix of brain spotting and attachment therapy. And so brain spotting, the preparation is quite different, because you often are not going to be talking about a lot of things. You generally take one issue that you're processing really, really deeply. And as you process that, it brings up a lot of other things that are wanting to be healed and met with love and weaved into. So in brain spotting, you often might just bring like a stomachache that wants to be met. And in attachment therapy that I do, it's a lot about bringing love to inner child and parts of ourselves that have been harmed, and growing the skills and secure attachment to ourselves.
Yeah, I guess the easiest like differentiation of the two, of doing talk therapy to then like brain spotting and stuff, is with talk therapy, it's using your thinking part of your brain because you're talking. But then with brain spotting, it's not really using that part of the brain as much. It's like more tuning into your whole body. which is also a good thing because the body keeps a score. And there's a whole book on that as well. Yeah,
I think that's really important. And that's why I did embodied therapy, because I work with folk who had trauma and it's in the body. Helen said that's really interesting. I've had therapy so many times and I'm surprised that I've never been offered guidance on how to prepare for or follow up. Obviously I've got a degree in psychology. Treya's just got a degree in psychology now, or therapeutic psychology. And there's never been training for either of us on how to prepare a session. I just happened to be, I was very proactive because as a client, and every one of my therapists would always go, "You're just the most proactive client we have." And I'm like, that's because I've got a whole load of trauma and I need to get through it all. Like I've got lists of like spreadsheets of every trauma that I have. I'm just really, really proactive.
It's your hyperfixation.
It is. It's a hyperfixation. So I'm obsessed with therapy and really work hard on it. And I guess, now Treya had to do an assignment, and because she has struggled with her short-term memory, I wanted to create these questions that as soon as she leaves the therapy session, she could ask herself. So I'll put those onto a Google Doc for everybody in Restore, and you're welcome to use those in, with me, with any therapist you choose to do. And I will put this video I've got a little thing on like how to choose a therapist. I will put this video with that, so that people who are looking for a therapist would be able to know how to get the best out of their sessions as well. So I hope that's been helpful for everybody. And folk in Restore, if you're seeing a therapist, always come and share with us. Oh, I saw my therapist and this is what I learned. Because the more that you are sharing the insights, the more they become integrated and embedded into who you are and who you're becoming. So we want to talk about our insights. We want to talk about our growth and the healing process that's going on. Treya, I'm so grateful for you for saying yes, even though you were exhausted, feeling sick. And I'm so proud of you for being up for it and willing to expose yourself to the world and be vulnerable. You make me so proud.
Thanks. Yeah, no, I was like, yes, I was resistant to doing this. But then also I know like how helpful it was for me to do all of this stuff. Because then also it just means that when like years down the line you're able to look back and be like, oh wow, I've grown so much. Yes. And also if you always forget, like if you forget like key things that were like epiphanies, or like, oh my gosh, I can't, and you can't remember it, then you can go back to the notes and find it, and then you can remember it again. Yeah.
So worth it. And nowadays we've got Google Docs, so you could just type on a Google Doc or type in a note on your phone or record on a note on your phone. It's so much easier to be able to take notes afterwards in a simple and easy way. And some clients come and do Zoom calls with me, and then they ask to download the whole Zoom call onto their computer. I'm fine with that. You're welcome.
Because you also write therapy notes as well.
I write masses of, I try to type up every word, because in my head, one day I'm going to write a book. One day. And so I want very clear notes on the processes that I'm taking people through. So some sessions, one session, the longest I've ever typed was like 18 pages. My arms were aching at the end of the session. So I take really, really extensive notes in most sessions. In some sessions I don't, and I don't know why. Some sessions I'm just so deeply listening that I forget that I'm meant to be taking notes. So great. All right, lovely people. I hope that's been so helpful for you. And Restore members, I will make a little thing for you with the reflective questions for you to ask yourself. And I'm sending you all love on your healing journey. Thanks, Mawu. I appreciate you. It looks like you're frozen. All right. Love to you. Bye.